ask questions, you have them. Probably more than likely we'll be coming back to have a separate meeting to talk about more specifically about some one or two different products, because any one of these products I could talk about a half hour to 45 minutes on. Well, maybe not the bulkhead.
Yeah.
But as far as our instrumentation line, a lot of these specialty valves and so on and so forth, we could talk a long time. So first of all, I appreciate you guys coming in and having lunch and hopefully learn a little bit. There's a pad of paper here. If you guys don't have a business card you can give me, if you could just maybe sign in here, because I want to keep track of who all is here. So you don't have to do it right this second, just at some point before you leave. But how many people have actually are familiar? Thank you. Familiar with Hayward? I mean, have sold their product in the past.
Sold it.
Okay. All right. So some of you haven't. I used to work for Ryan Herco for 35 years. So I sold everybody's product. I'm familiar with Spears, Hayward, everybody that's out there basically. And Spears is a good company. They're right up the street from you guys basically. I understand that. We do have some products that are unique that Spears doesn't have. So I'll try to point out some of those as well. And if we can't be number one, certainly like to be number two on your list as far as what you're selling. So understand that, well, I'll get into some of where our products are made, but they make their product in the United States, and so do we. Almost all of our products are made in the United States. We've been in the business for 50 years, manufacturing products. We used to have a metals division. You guys, I don't know, do you guys sell the Hayward or Eaton strainers?
Yeah.
Okay. That was sold off a number of years back and became a part of Eaton's product line. But I get calls probably every other week about, somebody wants to buy a Hayward strainer, and then I find out it's a metal strainer they're looking for. So here's the number. I almost know that number by heart now. I started with Hayward myself about a year and a half ago. So I'm relatively new with Hayward itself, but certainly, like I mentioned, I've sold them for many years in the past. Most of our products are actually made in our Clemens, North Carolina facility. It's a 700,000 square foot facility. Does any of you guys have a pool or anything? Do you guys have a Hayward pumps or instrumentation or anything like that in the pools? Because that's what Hayward's really known for. Our division's just a little baby division compared to the pool division. So, I also get a lot of calls on pool stuff. So Hayward's got a pretty well-known name, and again, been in business for a long time. And the flow, we call ours flow control, so it's Hayward Flow Control. That division itself, that one sells, just the industrial product. So again, there is a little confusion. I think sometimes little people will call about the residential stuff, or even for commercial swimming pool. But that's not the stuff that we sell here. So we have 2-year warranties on all of our products. We do Lean Six Sigma manufacturing, and if you guys have ever been involved or have heard about that, that basically all is continuous improvement. It's always ways to improve your processes. We're ISO 9001 certified. We actually, if there is an RG, something goes out wrong, it gets reviewed. Why did it come back? If it was a problem because of the product itself, then we try to figure out what happened and try to improve it. And we have a pretty lengthy process. Anything this Six Sigma is a very lengthy process. So I've been involved in just the actual manufacturing of a new product. A new product, it takes years to develop it, because we actually go back to input from the end user, engineers, and then we put all the stuff out there. All the competitors say, what do you like about the stuff, what do you don't like about it, and that's how we actually start making our new products. We don't just decide, I think if we do this, it's going to be better. We actually go out in the field and try to find out, what are the customers looking for? What are the engineers looking for? Because that's obviously the ones that are specifying the product. So we want to make sure that we're basically scratching where they're itching. A lot of our products are NSF 61 certified. Potable water, every once in a while you might run into that. Somebody says, is it NSF approved? Well, actually, if you open up our industrial product guide, it shows which items are NSF approved right in the second page. So, but you can call me up, I'll let you know. And then we have our own in-house actuation, and I'll show one of the actuators we have here. Anybody sold actuation of any type in the past? Mm-hmm. Okay. Whose actuation do you guys sell currently?
On the PVC, we're really not stuck to anybody right now. But, yeah.
Okay. Most everybody uses somebody else's actuator. Nobody really is making their own actuator themselves. They buy it from another manufacturer, and they basically adapt it to their valves. And we're no different. We buy them out And except for, we do have a pneumatic line that actually is our own in-house actuation, but most everything else is bought out.
Is that ASCO that usually does it for you guys?
No, actually, there's a company called Probation that is one of our actuators, an electric actuator. We have a company called Habanim, which is an Israeli manufacturer. They come over to the United States and, or we use their actuators and build them at our place. But you know, it's great actuators. So those are the two primary ones: the Probation line and the Habanim line. Okay, you're probably all familiar with the ball valves here. Okay, this one here. I'll show you the difference effect before we go to this. Well, before I get into that, we have these two items here, this QVC and the QTA. What those are, if you're not familiar with that series of stuff, that's the only few that are actually made offshore. Because we have to compete sometimes with people that are bringing stuff in from overseas, or you guys have to compete with people that are bringing things overseas. And they need a very, very cheap valve. Now that's not something I want to try to sell or promote, but you guys need to be aware of it. We actually do have a very inexpensive product line for those people that are using it for water. I wouldn't use it for chemicals or things like that, but if somebody's got an irrigation line, they just need something really cheap, you know, that's where you can go to, right? Those series right there, those two. Outside of that, everything else is made in the United States. Our proportional control, this is called a Profile 2. The difference in this valve versus just your regular true union ball valve is this profiled ball inside there. And what that allows somebody to do is, a lot of times people have to use like a needle valve or a diaphragm valve to turn things down to get a fine flow. This allows somebody to do this, but with a quarter turn valve. So when you go to actuation, for instance, if somebody wants to actuate a diaphragm valve, you have to get this multi-turn actuator. It's like, you know, $10,000 just for the actuator itself. So this is a lot less expensive to do it, and if they don't need this really, really super fine control, these valves actually work very nicely for those, you know, applications. So
What size is that?
it goes to 2-inch.
Is it like a V port almost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it's right there. That's what
Okay.
it looks like. So, again, just like these valves here, just the only thing that's different is the ball itself. Now this is the same valve as this, with the exception of it's got a different colored handle. And the reason why it's got a different colored handle is because of get this thing to work. That little, you can't really see it very well, but there's a hole that's drilled, and if you want to pass it around, you can see that hole in there. So what that hole does is people are using sodium hypochlorite bleach applications. Anybody that's using bleach, they should be using that valve. They shouldn't be using a regular ball valve, because the problem with a regular ball valve is that if you actually close the valve and you let it sit there for a period of time, and especially if it's hot outside, it outgasses, and then you can't turn that handle. People end up breaking the handles. You can't. They basically have to take the whole ball out. They have to shut down their, you know, line and everything. That allows enough room so that won't happen. So we sell a lot of those to wastewater treatment plants that are being built today. And you guys, you know, along with our basket strainers, that's probably the second biggest thing we're selling are those, you know, for sodium hypochlorite applications. And this is one of those profile valves right there.
So the Profile 2 has the V port, and
Yep.
the Z has the vent.
Exactly. It's just got the drilled ball. In essence, that true union ball valve becomes a one-way ball valve, because you should always have that drilled ball on the upside of wherever your liquid is being closed down on. So if you've got a tank here and your valve's here, that ball should be on this side of it, so that it always has that ability when you shut that valve off that the outgassing will be on. And one of the biggest problems I've seen is people putting them in backwards. They'll go, oh, this valve isn't, you know, working right. You know, I'm having this leaking through problem. I'm going, you got it turned around the wrong direction. So.
Close it.
And that's another nice thing about that valve is that's the vented valves that you can see that. I mean, you walk through a line, you can see the guy's got a vented valve. There are other people, Asahi for instance, they'll drill a ball, but they don't show it. You can't tell the vented one from a non-vented one. The handles are the same, everything's the same. They just drill the ball. Butterfly valves, I won't get into this. Again, this could be a whole separate meeting, but we have a new butterfly valve that's been out for about 1.5 years. It's called our BYV. It replaces our BY valve. We still have the BY available, but it's being phased out just because this valve is a much better valve. Again, went back to the engineers, the end users, developed this. Real quickly, the key points on this thing are that it's got ISO 5211 mount on the top, so somebody could use their own actuators and actuate this valve if they wanted. Almost everybody's valves nowadays are going to this ISO certification, something like ISO 5211 style mounting, so they can use their own actuators. This has 19 positions it can stop. Most butterfly valves have 9 or 10. This has 19. You can lock it out, you can tag it out, you know. It's actually an excellent valve. And another time we'll go through this, I'll kind of go through the pluses of this thing over the competition. The other thing it has is places, like everybody pretty much tags their valves. There's holes right here where somebody can put their tags to. That's where you put a lock or like a zip, like just think about cable tie. A metal cable tie goes through that so that people can't move it if they get it in the position they want. Okay, unique to us is some of these products right here. We got our pressure relief valves, which are these. There's a little plug on the end, and where that plug, you don't have to use a gauge, but a lot of times people will put a gauge in there so they can basically set it to what they want to set it for. Problem with most other people's or their pressure relief valves, they have to put a T and then put a gauge.
Yeah.
That's actually built into it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so it regulates everything that's upstream. That's what a pressure relief valve does. It regulates everything that's upstream. Conversely, your regulator, actually, think of it as the stuff in your house. You're trying to protect all your sinks and everything else, the faucets on the house. That's what a regulator is for, everything downstream.
So that's okay for continuous bypass?
The relief valve, yes. Yeah, and that's called a lot of different things. Bypass valve, pressure bypass valve. What's the other things I've heard? I've heard a lot of different things. That one almost has 5 different names, whereas the regulator is a regulator. You know.
Now, is that good for different, there's different springs and different pressures?
Yeah, you can, yeah, in fact, I'll tell you what, let me just do something here. I cut out a lot of slides out of there just because.
We'll push the springs.
Okay. That is recycling.
Oh, I'll just do this. There's known as back pressure regulator, bypass relief valve, back pressure valve, anti-siphon valve. That's what a relief valve is known by a lot of different names. But to answer your question here, oh, I guess it doesn't have it. Anyway, yes, it has different springs for your regulator.
From like 0 to 10.
Yeah, exactly. For your low side or your high side. And again, we can talk about different applications. I got all sorts of slides on different applications for these things in case you guys ever wanted to talk about that more specifically. Regulators, same thing. All right, now the solenoid valve. You guys might have ASCO or somebody else like that, but this is our solenoid valve. That is actually comes in really handy when you're using a chemical. Not for water. People using water, you may as well use a brass valve or something like that. But if somebody has a chemical of some sort, and we sell a lot of those solenoid valves, I was very surprised to learn how many that Hayward does sell of those. And I have, in my area, we sell a lot of them as well. It's just quick on-off. It's just instantaneous on, instantaneous off. It comes in 120 volt, 24 volt, 12 volt. You can get different coils for it.
Can you use those in chlorinated water applications?
It depends. What kind of, is it water? Is it mostly water with a little bit of chlorine, or is it almost all chlorine? Do you know?
No.
Okay. But yeah, they have been used in them. We have CPVC and PVC, so we'll probably be using the CPVC if I was in that application. So. Okay. Something else I'll just make mention of. You mentioned the basket strainers. That's our SB series. We also have our duplex, and that's used a lot in the water treatment areas. But we have lateral 3-way ball valves. The regular type have the bottom ports down here. The laterals is out to the side. It's like a T that's turned sideways. So it's in a good valve. We sell a lot of those. LHB series. That's our basically it's a actuator that goes on top of your valve. Like you can take the handle off this, put the actuator on top. but it's a manual. All it is you put the handle on top of that and turn it, and when it turns, it sends a signal to a computer to say that valve's either open or closed. So somebody that might not need a electric actuator or pneumatic actuator, but just needs to know whether a valve is open or closed, this works on both a butterfly valve and a ball valve. And we saw a lot of those as well. Because every once in a while you run into situations where the guy goes, I don't need an actuator, but I need to know whether that thing's open or closed. I don't want to have to send a guy out there to find out if it's open or closed.
Yeah.
And then we have wafer check valve, which is, where did it go? Right for you, Lisa, that one. That's also a newer product. We have ball check valves, and then this wafer check valve is, and you can get with a spring or without a spring, but basically that's just a way to, takes up less space if it needs something to go between flanges. It's another product. Okay, we have metering pumps. Are anybody here familiar with metering pumps or ever get calls for metering pumps?
I have, yep.
Okay. These are excellent metering pumps. The thing I like most about them is that you just have one way to control them. Instead of having a stroke length controller and a speed controller, you just have a speed controller. You don't have to worry about the length. And you can see this kind of shows different functions of a metering pump. So you have the type that, like this is called a solenoid driven pump. So ours goes like this. It pushes against the diaphragm right here. And what it does is when it pushes against it, it sucks liquid up and then pushes it out. You have gear metering pumps. That's what it looks like. And if you have a peristaltic, which is a tubing, they call them tubing pumps. That's what it does. It just basically rolls the liquid along. It's a pretty simple concept. But again, ours is actually a solenoid driven. Very simple components. The thing that makes, you got a diaphragm inside the pump head here. The diaphragm in there. And then of course you got the solenoid that pushes that diaphragm. This is your inlet, this is your outlet. This actually is it's kind of like that venting ball valve. This is the degassing valve right here. Oh, it's also a kind of assist for priming. So somebody's starting to pump up, you just kind of open the valve, let some air out while it's priming, and then you just close it down and got a nice prime. And this also, all of these have double ball check valves on them, and they're cartridge style. So almost everybody else's metering pump, in fact everybody else's metering pump, you have to either buy a ball separately, an O-ring separately, and fool around with that. And if anybody's ever tried to handle those stupid little balls, they fall out of your hand, they go down. If you're unfortunate enough to be in a waste treatment area, you watch that go into a tank somewhere, roll down. But
on the drain.
Yeah, it's crazy how difficult it is just to do that little thing. To have to fix a check valve. But ours are actually cartridge. They all look like this. It has an arrow, so it shows which direction the liquid's supposed to go. And you can see, like, there's 1, 2, 3. There's 3 different areas where you check valves. And again, just double check valve. It comes standard with the pump. Actually, here's some of the other components. I want to throw them all out there, but this is actually a foot valve that actually goes into your chemical tank or whatever you're going to be pumping out of there. It's got a check valve on the bottom, and it's basically a foot valve is what it is. Then if somebody has to inject into a pressurized line, in fact, we're taking that and let's say a golf course, and they're fertilizing their golf course, and they inject fertilizer into a pressurized line. Then you need to have what comes standard with it too. It's one of these. It's an injection valve. So basically, it doesn't allow anything to come back, but it allows the pump to pump it into the line. So this all comes standard with it. The thing that's really nice about this pump is that it only comes in PVDF and Teflon. That's it. You can get it with Python O-rings or you can get it with EPDM O-rings, but you don't have to, all you have to do is check one chemical resistance check. We can compete with the PVC. We can compete with the Polypro. Obviously the PVDF. We've been able to manufacture it less expensively enough so that we can compete in that marketplace. There's only one pump we can't get down low enough to, and that's called a Iwaki Wallchem. It's a Japanese pump. They call it their EZ series, and it's like $100, $125 a pump. We can't get down that low. But probably 95% of the applications that are out there are not those type of applications. So the nice thing about this as a distributor is we have 3 different models, and that's it. And almost every one of them have exactly the same footprint. So it's like it doesn't take up much room on somebody's shelf. There's only 3 different types. And it makes it very easy to sell it, because one of the hard parts about as a distributor, if you're selling a metering pump, there's a lot of different configurations somebody can buy. They can get a PVC with this motor, get a glass-filled polypro with this motor, or a solid polypro with this motor, a PVDF with this motor. I mean, Curlic. I mean, like LMI, for instance. There's like 2,000 different variations that somebody can get. Somebody can say, well, that's good, isn't it? It's like, not really. It makes it really difficult as a distributor to try to stock the stuff. I mean, keep it so you can sell it. So anyway, so from a price standpoint, we can compete with everybody that's out there with a PVDF pump head. You can have a 4 to 20 milliamp. There's a lot of different options for this, and we'll get into this a little bit. But again, it simplifies the selling of it. This. That should have been screwed in anyway. Never mind. I was just going to show you can change the speeds. But basically, this is the only thing. You're not having to mess around with the stroke length. And why that's important is with the stroke length, just think of it this way. The longer that thing strokes, the more that flex on the diaphragm. So your diaphragms don't last very long, which this actually has a 5-year guarantee on the diaphragm. So that somebody won't have to actually replace their diaphragm for 5 years. And maybe not even that, depends on how often they use it. It's Teflon, it only strokes, only so far, it's controlled. That's why people like LMI and those people, they can't really say how long their diaphragms are going to last, because it just depends on how somebody uses it. It depends on if they're using 100% stroke length or a 25% stroke length. So this is something that's, and again, it's an advantage that we have over the other guys. Our flow rates are basically from 1 gallon per hour to 14 gallons per hour. And that represents about 95% of the applications that are used for solenoid-driven metering pumps. We have what I call our Series 100, Series 200, and Series 500. You can see the 100 goes from 1 gallon per hour to 2, and then the other one from 2 to 4, and though, and basically from 5 to 14. Yeah, we talked about that PVDF pump head. Let's see if there's anything on that worthwhile talking about. The only thing that's worth showing here is just the fact that if you look at the dimensions of all these pumps, the only thing that's just a little bit different is that C dimension, which is this one. So the funny part is that the smaller pumps actually are a little bit longer, but that's because we have the degassing valve on this front, whereas the other one's on the side. So the larger one's larger in size, it's just that the degassing valve's on the side, not on front. Different ways you hook up these pumps, either on a wall, on top of a pump, or on top of a tank, or down below. We have both a digital models. This is an analog model because you can actually do this manually. We also have digital models that are exactly the same, just one's available as an analog, one's available as a digital. And then you can either get a multi-function. You can take signals coming in to control the pump. You can just have it pump dose a certain amount, however you want to set it up. 3 different types of dosing. And again, if you get an application, just call me up and we'll figure out which pump would work best for you. It has the UL listings, CSA listings, and then European listings. Okay. Any questions as far as the metering pump? Okay. Instrumentation. This is another new line that we've taken. And we're trying to compete, and then we'll show you some of this a little bit different with people like George Fisher, Signet that's out there. We have a paddle wheel, which is right here. One of the things that's nice about this particular one is you can get this with or without this on top here. Basically, the top works here. This can send a 4 to 20 milliamp relay somewhere else, or actually can have a couple different relays on this thing. And it tells somebody the flow. If you set this thing up, you see it has green and red. Basically, it'll show somebody right there whether it's in a red condition or a green condition, and it shows you the flow, gives you the total. It totalizes. You can reset it. It has. This is all again PVDF. This is a Teflon paddle wheel, and this Teflon paddle wheel has 5 paddles on it versus like George Fisher has 4. And the reason why that's important is that this actually gives you 1 extra, it's like 20% more accuracy than the George Fisher one will. So, in addition to that, with GFs, you have to use, to get the low flow, kind of like we were talking about those springs different. Well, on the low end of a paddle wheel, they actually have to use a separate paddle wheel altogether. And basically from a 0.3 to 20 foot per second, or they have to use one that's a 1 to 20 foot per second. This one actually will go from 0.33 to 26 foot per second. So it's a, oops, get back there, sorry. And the other thing that this allows is, first of all, you could actually, if you wanted to, you could take one from Sigma and put that one in. You know, it actually fits into their tee and everything, but we of course have our own installation tees as well. But the one thing that that is different from GFs that they don't have is this right here. This is also a paddle wheel, but this has a TopWorks on it as well. So with GFs, you actually have to have a paddle wheel, a tee, and then actually a meter somewhere else. So this gives you all in one as well. So this, much like this one is, because GF can get one like this as well. It costs a lot more and there's a lot more to it. This is a very simple inline one. Nobody has to mess around with K-factors, which K-factor is how many pulses there are, and you don't have to mess around with it. It comes standard already as a part of this unit, so you wouldn't have to mess around with it at all. Available in polypro, CPVC, PVC.
And that also has outputs on it?
Yes, has outputs. In fact, almost all these operate exactly the same as far as how you actually calibrate them and everything. So, as far as setting them up, and kind of pass through some of those gauges that are sitting in front of you. These are also relatively new. The ones that are there with the little green, red, and yellow, it's kind of a simple little design. That's a double-sided gauge. Where those are used, a lot of filtration. You guys sell any filtration, like cartridge filters or bag filters or things like that?
Yeah.
Well, every one of those guys are going to use some kind of a gauge of some sort because they need to know when to change out their bag or their cartridges. And the way they do that is by pressure differential. They need to have. They say when it gets to this much pressure, we need to clean these vessels out. So they'll put a gauge on top of it or somewhere in that line to tell them when they need to actually replace it out. This kind of neat because it's so simple. It's kind of silly. You can take those off if you want. You pull them off. I mean, somebody could just leave what they want on there and say, okay, when it hits this little red thing here,
Broke it.
that's, no, you didn't break it. When it hits that red thing there, time to change out. You get, instead of having the red, like a stop sign or something, or a stop light, they can just use one of those. If
Or
they want
have
to.
sometimes have an arrow drawn where.
Yeah, exactly. Some people draw an arrow, exactly. So this gives a visual for somebody to use, and that other one there in front of Lisa is the same thing, but on the single side. So, again, this just, and those are gauge guards too, by the way. Those actually protect the gauge. It's all one piece, and it's available in PVDF and polypropylene.
And why would you want double face versus single
Well,
face?
because let's say a guy's on a plating line, okay? It's this table, and you got these these are tanks. Pretend these are tanks, and you got your filtration behind there, and you're on this side of that tank, and this thing's like 50 feet long or 50 yards long, and that thing's turned the other way, and you can't see what the pressure is on that side. So what happens? Oh, you got to send somebody around to find out what the what it
50
is.
feet around that way.
Yeah. So that's where that kind of thing can come in handy. So somebody can see it from whichever side that they're on of a line. Again, it's gonna have. I can think of a few customers that use it right offhand. That it's people that build equipment, etchers and things like that. They're using it. So for that exact reason. We also have a battery-operated one that's around there. Yep, and that one has a 3-year battery life. So those remote applications where they don't have power, they just want something that will show what their pressure is. This allows it to have it as well. There's also this one that's showed here that I don't have one sample with me. This is kind of a neat one for those applications where there's like a metering pump, or if you guys sell air-operated diaphragm pumps like Wilden's or somebody like that, those have pulsations, and anytime there's a pulsation, the needle goes like this every time. This actually doesn't do that. This one's actually a surge suppressor gauge, so that way it just you don't have that needle bouncing back and forth. So just another option. And then we also have this other one that I don't show, this one there in the middle, which is actually a powered meter. And almost all of our things are 24 volt DC, by the way. And that's a very common voltage for most industrial people. They typically are using 24 volt DC. But just as an FYI, all of these are that are the instruments are 24 volt DC if it's powered. You know, if it's not powered, then you don't have to worry about it. Pressure alarms. This again would be something where you want to send a signal somewhere that warns somebody that, hey, this thing's exceeding the pressure. You need to get out there and change out the vessel. So again, just another option. We talked about that. Okay, so the paddle wheel that has that top mount, we also have it without the top mount on it, and it looks like that. And basically, it's a shielded 3-wire that goes to a computer. So why would somebody use it without this? Well, maybe they got a computer that does all the calculations themselves. They just need to know what the pulses are, and they can calculate it themselves. So we have it with a DIN connector or just a standard, you know, wire that goes straight to the computer. So it's available either way. We actually have level transmitters. So people that have tanks, like a tank farm or something, they need to know how much liquid is inside their tank. There are a lot of people are going to what they call ultrasonic level control, and ultrasonic actually is a very good product. And if they can use it, that's what they're going to use, because then they don't have to, you know, be invasive and, you know, put something inside the tank. But there are applications where there's foam. There's foaming, and what else is there? There's gas. There's different things, or even just fluctuations in the liquid level that makes the ultrasonic misread. So this is something that goes in the tank. It will be able to, it's very consistent. You know, it doesn't matter about foam. It doesn't matter about any of that stuff. It bases everything on the weight of the liquid. So it's very easy to tell how, and you can correct it for specific gravities and things like that. So another option again. So if you have people looking for something to monitor the level of their tanks, we have that. And then of course we have the displays and the controllers, so you send that signal somewhere else, show it on display, you can send it right to your computers if you want to. Then we have an alarm system, just if somebody wants to know, have a visual that there's a problem, there's an alarm. And this is a actuator with a plastic housing. So all of our other actuators are pretty much metal as far as in the electric side of things. But this is in case somebody has a corrosive atmosphere they need to go into. This has a beacon on the top. Shows you whether the valve is open or closed. You can kind of see that line there. And why that's important, or why it's good, is that if this valve is up here somewhere and you don't have a beacon, you can't tell whether that thing's open or closed. With this, you can actually see it from below. So it's something that the other guys don't have. This is actually a manual override, so if the power went out for whatever reason, I can just switch this thing over and I can turn this thing. You can see how this actually will turn when I'm turning this. What else on this thing? It has a power, it tells you whether there's power on or not as soon as I hit this. Plug in?
No, it's not plugged in.
That helps. Wrong plug. Oh, okay, thank you. That does help. And then that should be closing right now. But wow, actually it's opening. Can you guys see that at all? It takes 10 seconds. This is a 10-second actually.
Does that beacon say open, close on it, or is it just where it's positioned?
Look and make sure I got this thing turned on. Hold on. I think I don't have this thing right.
Closing now?
Should be. There we go. It is now the thing locked in position. So now it turns the other way, and now we'll open it up. Again, it's a very nice, inexpensive plastic actuator for in case somebody who needs to, you know, have something that open and close their valve actuated when it's in a corrosive atmosphere. That's a good valve. A good, I should say, actuator for it. And then, of course, we have actually, that's a smaller size, different types. It goes up to 6-inch, half through 6-inch for ball valves, and then 2 to 6 inch on the butterflies. It's a 75% duty rating, but basically means it needs to be off for, if it's on for 45 seconds, it needs to be off for 15 seconds. That's basically a 75% duty cycle. It needs to cool down. It's IP67, which basically means that when you, have you heard what's a wash down? People, you have to have something washed down. This actually can take a spray up to, I think it's 15 psi, so somebody could actually be washing down. That actuator's not going to affect it at all. Let's see here, what else?
Guess that plastic housing probably holds up a little better than aluminum wash down.
Yeah, it does. All of them have this has a thermal overload. In other words, once it gets hot, it's going to stop. You know,
So it doesn't kill itself.
Yeah, exactly. And NEMA 4.4X. Anyway, and then our primary markets, as you may or may not know, water, wastewater, industrial water treatment, chemical processing, process manufacturing, aquatic. We do a lot with aquariums, as well as waste treatment, plating and service finishing, aquaculture, and offshore mining and fracking. Unfortunately, fracking's not doing too good right now, but fracking was a big part of our business as well. So, any questions so far? I brought those bulkheads only because people don't know that we actually have two different types. We have one that's an extended style. You can see that's the same bulkhead, except that one's got a longer thread. So some people like to have the longer buttress threads. Some like the shorter ones, but I just wanted to make sure people were aware of the fact that there are two different types. And so you got a longer style or a short one. So what makes ours different than, say, Spears or anybody else's out there is our left-handed thread. And why it's important, and I don't know why they don't do it that way, but when you actually thread a piece of pipe into that thing, it tightens it up more. It doesn't. Whereas if you do it in somebody else's bulkhead, it loosens it. And if you loosen the bulkhead, it's tough to get inside that tank to tighten it back up. Somebody has to hold it from the inside to tighten it up. So you definitely don't want to loosen a bulkhead accidentally on a big tank. So. And we actually, we sell a lot of bulkheads. I mean, my region alone is probably one of the biggest sellers. It's kind of silly, but it really is. So a lot of those things. We also have a product that's called a tank. It tightens it so that if somebody has vibration and they need to, try to make sure that nut doesn't loosen for whatever reason because of the vibration. There's actually a product out there that goes up through 3-inch that goes between that nut and the tank, and it keeps pressure on that bulkhead to keep it from actually turning at all. So there's.
You guys don't make these in poly, do you?
Yeah, we do.
Poly and PVC.
All right, that's big. And then I guess there's another product out there. There's an angle valve, and I got a needle valve that's over there. It's just a few other little products I threw out there in case you didn't know we made them. We have angle valves that are like needle valves, and then that small one, and then that one that you got in your hand right there. That's actually, people call them lab valves, lab cock valves, and it's just a 1/4-inch valve, but it comes with all the different types of configurations, like whether it's a male thread, female thread, it's braided in. It all comes packaged into one, and it's a good 1/4-inch valve.
Does it matter what side goes inside the tank?
No, yeah, it doesn't. It does. It matters which side. It's that flange piece would be on the inside of the tank. So. Now you can get that, by the way, with a thread on the inside too. So if somebody wants to thread something like have a stand pipe that goes inside the tank, they can get that with a thread on the inside as well. So you can have a thread on the out and the inside, or a socket. And I don't know if that one's a socket. I can't tell from here.
Yeah,
yes, somebody can glue something in there too if they wanted to. And that the actual gasket itself should always go on the inside of the tank. It's just in case that ever gets asked, not on the outside.
So you do sell a lot of them around here?
Well, not specifically around here. No.
These are pretty good territories.
Yeah, yeah, I cover from basically Virginia to Long Island. All the big tank manufacturers, they're the only people that we sell directly to, like Poly Processing and Snyder tanks. those people all use these bulkheads. And the only reason why we sell them directly, and they did that long before I started with them, is because there are a lot of people trying to get that business directly themselves, so that's it.
Cool.
Any questions, guys?
James, anything you, no?
You see a lot of specialty items that they have that you
Yeah.
just don't, think about. And there's a lot of things that have to be PVC because whether it's corrosion or chemicals and everything. So a lot of different items. Hayward kind of specializes itself in just different items that not everybody makes. So
Yeah, we tried to, since we don't have pipe and fittings, we have to have some other products that other people don't necessarily carry. So, we gotta try to stay viable in this marketplace
No,
by,
far not.
having a lot of different unique products.
Your availability on the ball valves from North Carolina will be
They're-
2 day.
So we typically get vehicles on the same day. But yeah, at the very worst, it's like 2-day delivery.
2 to 3 day UPS.
Yeah. And we have a freight-free policy for anything over $2,000, so, it's for 2,000, it goes freight-free, so.
You need general literature on some of these items here and the relief valves.
Yeah, yeah, I got some, actually got some literature if anybody wants any. There's, I got some industrial